You're still just uneducated trash. Get out of my house." That was the last thing my father ever said to me as his daughter. And the worst part, no one at the table said a word to defend me. Not my mom, not my brother, not even my sister, whose dream wedding I had paid for in full. I stood there frozen, not in anger, not even shame, just realization. You won't believe what happened 3 weeks later. Let's just say, when he saw my beachfront house, he finally realized who he threw out. My name is Rachel Hayes. I'm 34, and I built a $20 million company from scratch without a college degree. No trust fund, no Ivy League, just years of failure, grit, and ramen noodles. But for most of my life, my family saw me as the dropout, the disappointment, the one who didn't follow the right path. They had no idea I was the one quietly paying off their debt, their medical bills, their dreams. Until the night it all came crashing down. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to believe in you most, stay with me. And before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because this one's for the silent achievers. Let me take you back. I grew up in Livonia, Michigan. It's one of those places where reputation mattered more than reality, where success meant degrees, job titles, and staying close to home. My dad, Gregory Hayes, was an accountant for 30 years at the same local firm. Steady, predictable, always in control. My mom, Linda, taught second grade. Quiet, composed, never challenged Dad's word. And then there was me, the odd one out. Even as a kid, I didn't fit in. While other girls played pretend, I was selling flavored lemonade on the corner, complete with punch cards for return customers. By 13, I was fixing neighbors' laptops for $20 as an hour. But to my parents, it was just a phase, a distraction. "Rachel needs to stop these silly games," Dad would say. "They won't pay the bills." Meanwhile, my older brother Darren followed the script, perfectly financed degree, suit, mortgage by 27. And my little sister, Sienna Daddy's girl, became an accountant like him, talked like him, worshipped his validation. In high school, I was never the straight-A student. My grades were decent, but I was obsessed with reading business blogs, watching Shark Tank reruns, flipping things online. I even launched an online store selling customized phone cases. Made $2,000 before graduation. But none of that counted to my parents. It wasn't real work. To keep the peace. I enrolled in Lansing Community College after high school. It lasted 1 semester. I couldn't sit through lectures on theories written by people who never ran a business. It felt like prison. I dropped out and never looked back. That decision tore our family apart. "You'll ruin your life," Dad shouted. "You'll end up flipping burgers for the rest of your days." Mom cried. Darren refused to look at me. Sienna sent me articles about how dropouts go broke. I left home at 19 with $2,000 in my bank account and a whole lot of doubt in my chest. The next 2 years were brutal. I lived in a studio apartment where the heater broke every other week, ate tuna and instant noodles, worked 18-hour days trying and failing to get my e-commerce ideas off the ground. One venture failed because I trusted the wrong supplier. Another because I underpriced myself. My jewelry line couldn't scale beyond weekend markets. But each failure taught me what no classroom could. Then I met Charlene Moore, a veteran entrepreneur who saw something in me that no one in my own family did. She mentored me, no judgment, just tough lessons and brutal honesty. By 22, with her help, I launched what would become Harvest Link, a marketplace connecting small U.S. manufacturers to customers craving locally made goods. I slept on a futon beside my desktop computer, took customer service calls at 2 a.m., designed packaging on Canva, and packed boxes myself. It was messy, exhausting, and completely mine. The breakthrough came when a lifestyle blogger featured one of our artisans. Orders exploded overnight. $10,000 in a week. I cried the first time I saw my bank account hit 5 digits. I called my dad, Told him about the spike in orders. He didn't ask how I felt or what I needed. That's nice, Rachel. But don't get too comfortable. You can always go back to college when it fizzles out. That call didn't end in a fight. It ended in silence. Because I knew what I had to do. I'd prove him wrong, not with words. But with success he couldn't ignore. After that call with my dad, I made a decision. No more seeking validation. No more trying to impress people who couldn't see past my lack of a diploma. I threw myself into building Harvest Link. Back then, it was just me, a second-hand laptop, and a dream to help American artisans stay afloat. I wanted to prove that success didn't have to come in a cap and gown. It could come from grit, sweat, and real-world problem-solving. The early days weren't glamorous. I turned my tiny apartment into a warehouse office hybrid. Half my living space was stacked with boxes and packing supplies. I'd roll off my futon at 5 a.m., write product descriptions, field emails, fix bugs on the site, and hand-pack every single order. 8 months in, one article changed everything. A popular blogger wrote about one of our Michigan-based woodworkers. Traffic tripled overnight. Orders poured in faster than I could fill them. I barely slept that week, running on caffeine and adrenaline. That one feature made us over 10,000. It wasn't just revenue, it was proof. Proof that people cared about small businesses, that there was a market for handmade, local products, that I was on to something real. But I didn't tell my family the full story. Not yet. Their skepticism still echoed in my mind. I wanted them to ask, to care enough to dig deeper. But the questions never came. Instead, they kept their focus on real jobs. Darren was promoted to senior consultant at his firm. Sienna landed a position at Dad's accounting firm right alongside him. At family gatherings, they talked about 401ks and job security. I was the side character, the dropout with a cute little website. Still, I kept giving, quietly. When my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer during year 4 of my business, I didn't hesitate. I called the hospital, arranged everything, and paid off the $75,000 her insurance didn't cover. I used a trust account under a different name, so no one would trace it back to me. Mom later told me that a settlement had come through. Thank God. I just nodded. When Darren and his wife were short on the down payment for their house, I wired $40,000 from a family trust I had set up through my lawyer. He thought it came from a great-uncle's estate. He didn't ask questions. Sienna's dream wedding hit a financial snag when her fiancé lost his job. Without saying a word, I covered the remaining $50,000 for the venue and catering. She thanked me at the time, but only in private. In public, she still referred to my business as Rachel's internet thing. It hurt, but I let it slide. I kept hoping that one day they'd see what I was building, that maybe they'd realize I wasn't chasing luck, I was building legacy. Meanwhile, Harvest Link grew faster than I ever expected. By year 3, we had over 400 artisan partners from all 50 states, from handmade pottery in Vermont to leather goods in Texas. People were hungry for authenticity, and we delivered it. We outgrew the apartment and moved into our first office space, a converted warehouse in downtown Ann Arbor. I hired a team, customer service reps, vendor managers, fulfillment specialists. We weren't just a startup anymore. We were a movement. When we crossed $1 million in annual revenue, I sat alone in that empty office at night with a glass of champagne. I didn't call my parents. I didn't post it online. I just let the silence soak in. Because somehow, in all my success, I still felt like I had something to prove. Then came the turning point. I was 33. Harvest Link was valued at $20 million. We had a full floor in an office building, 38 full-time employees, and partnerships with major retailers. Still, at every family gathering, I played the role they expected. Quiet, humble, unthreatening. Then Dad's 65th birthday rolled around. A milestone. And I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is when I show them. Not to brag, but to be seen for once. I didn't just want to give him a gift. I wanted to give him security, respect, closure. So I opened a fully funded retirement account for him, enough to cover the rest of his life comfortably. It wasn't about money. It was about saying, I made it, and I did it my way. That night, I rehearsed everything I planned to say. I even practiced smiling through potential awkward silences. I picked a simple dress. Nothing flashy, nothing bossy. Just Rachel, their daughter. The next evening, I pulled into my parents' driveway in the same used SUV I'd driven for 5 years. I didn't want the car to distract from the message. Inside, the house hadn't changed. The same beige carpet, same smell of roast beef, same family photos on the mantel, none of which included me after college. Darren and his wife were already there, laughing loudly in the kitchen. Sienna followed shortly after with Daniel, her husband. She immediately started talking about her promotion, how she might be the youngest junior partner in firm history. No one asked me a single question, not even a how's business. Dinner was the same as always. Safe conversations, compliments for the roast, jokes about retirement. When dessert came out, I took a breath. This was it. Dad, Mom, everyone, I began. I wanted to share something. My hands were shaking, but my voice held. Harvest Link was recently valued at $20 million. $20 million. We've had several acquisition offers. And last month, we were featured in Forbes Women. The room went silent. Mom froze mid-bite. Sienna blinked. Darren just stared. Dad set his fork down. What exactly does that mean, Rachel? His tone wasn't curious. It was skeptical, defensive. I explained. The growth, the employees, the partners, the impact. That's when Darren cut in. So you got lucky with your online thing. That's great. But some of us built real careers with actual qualifications. I looked at him, then at my dad, then at my mom. They didn't get it. They didn't want to. But I still handed Dad the envelope. This is for you, I said. It's a retirement account, fully funded. I wanted to give you the peace of mind you always gave us growing up. He opened it, looked at the documents. Then something shifted. His face went dark, and he said the words I will never forget. What is this supposed to be, charity? You think this makes you better than us? That's when everything started unraveling. At first, I thought I had misheard him, but my father just sat there, holding the documents like they were something dirty, something offensive. What is this supposed to be? He repeated, louder this time. Charity. I opened my mouth to respond, but he cut me off. We didn't raise you to throw money around like you're better than everyone. My heart pounded. This wasn't how I thought it would go. I thought he might be surprised, maybe a little emotional, but angry. I looked around the table. No one said a word. I wasn't trying to show off. I said, carefully, I just wanted to help, the same way I helped with Mom's medical bills, Darren's house, and Sienna's wedding. And that's when it happened. 3 heads snapped up at once. It was like I had detonated a bomb right in the middle of dessert. You? My father said slowly, as if putting the pieces together. That was you. Sienna's face turned pale. Darren's eyes narrowed. I hadn't meant to reveal it, but it was too late now. I was just trying to help. I said again, quieter this time. Darren slammed his palm on the table. You made us look like fools, like we needed handouts from your little website. It wasn't a handout, I said. It was support, because I love you. Support, he scoffed, by sneaking behind our backs. Sienna finally spoke. You could have told us. Let us decide. I looked at her, disbelief creeping in. You didn't seem to mind when the venue magically worked out, or when Daniel got laid off and suddenly the honeymoon was covered. She shifted uncomfortably, but didn't respond. Mom sat frozen, a fork still in her hand, her eyes darting between us like she was watching a car crash she couldn't stop. "Rachel," Dad said, his voice rising again, "you drop out of college, disappear for years, then show up throwing money around and acting like we owe you something." "I never said you owed me anything," I said, heat rising in my throat. "I never asked for anything. I just wanted you to see me, to see what I've built." "And what you've built," he snapped, "isn't real." That stung more than I expected. I felt the words tighten around my chest. "You think your success makes you part of this family?" he continued. "You're still just uneducated trash who got lucky. Anyone can get lucky." The room went dead silent. Even Darren stopped moving. Even Mom finally looked away. It wasn't just a moment of anger. It was honesty. It was what he really believed. I felt the blood drain from my face, but I stayed seated. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, every muscle in my body trembling with the force of trying to stay calm. I looked at each person at that table. My brother, who had taken my money and called it luck. My sister, who had minimized every effort I ever made. My mother, who had never defended me. And my father, the man I had once desperately wanted approval from. "I should go," I said quietly, pushing back my chair. "Yeah," Dad said coldly. "You should get out of my house. You and your internet money. We have standards here." I grabbed my purse with shaking hands. No one stopped me. No one followed. I walked out into the cold Michigan night and closed the door behind me. When I got to my car, I sat for a full minute before I could even grip the wheel. My hands were shaking too badly. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was done. I drove back to my hotel through blurry streetlights and a blurrier windshield. I had to pull over twice just to calm down enough to keep driving. In that sterile hotel room, under those harsh fluorescent lights, I replayed every word from that dinner, over and over again. Had I been arrogant? Was I wrong to bring up the money? Was I wrong to want to be recognized? I opened my laptop, and I started documenting every cent I had given them over the years. $75,000 for Mom's treatment, $120,000 for Darren's house, $50,000 for Sienna's wedding, another $22,000 for Dad's car repair, $35,000 for Mom's kitchen remodel, countless smaller things, Christmas gifts, emergency loans, unexpected bills, almost $300,000, given freely, anonymously, out of love. And in return, I was told I was trash. I closed the laptop. My phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. "Dad's still upset. He'll get over it. You know how he gets when he feels disrespected." No apology, no accountability, just another reminder that I was expected to endure it, again and again. I didn't respond. The next morning, I booked an emergency session with Dr. Brooks, my therapist back home in Florida. When I told her what happened, she listened without judgment. "Family wounds cut the deepest," she said, "especially when they challenge the very core of who you are." Over the next few days, we unraveled it all. How I'd spent years shrinking myself to be palatable to them. How I kept giving, hoping one day they'd love me without conditions. How success, to them, was only valid if it came with a diploma. And how my independence was never going to fit into their rigid mold. I started journaling, not just about that dinner, but about the years of being ignored, belittled, erased. The way they celebrated Darren's promotions like gold medals. The way they called my wins cute, or worse luck. I wasn't going to let this define me. But I also wasn't going back. A week passed before I listened to Sienna's voicemail. "Hey, please, call back. Dad feels bad. We all do. But you have to understand how it looked. You kind of showed up with all this money. It felt like you were making a point." I deleted it. Then Darren texted, "Family is family. Let's just move on." But I couldn't. Not this time. I had spent over a decade giving them everything, and they gave me nothing in return but silence, dismissal, and names I'd never forget. So I made a choice. A choice that would change everything. 2 weeks after that dinner, I woke up in my Florida condo to a flood of sunlight pouring through the blinds and a decision crystallizing in my chest. I was done. Done waiting for them to come around. Done twisting myself into a version they'd finally respect. I had crossed a line that night, not in a bad way, in a necessary way. And I wasn't going back. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. I brewed a cup of coffee, stepped onto my small balcony, and let the ocean breeze wrap around me. And I knew this wasn't a place to hide anymore. This was going to be home. That same morning, I sat down and wrote a letter. No screaming, no emotional spiral, just honesty. Dear Mom and Dad, I've spent years seeking your approval, supporting you, minimizing myself to keep the peace. I built a company from nothing, one that now employs dozens and uplifts hundreds of small American businesses. But when I shared that success with you, hoping for connection, you called me trash. That moment told me everything I needed to know. I'll always love you both, but I need distance for my own peace. If one day you're ready to have a relationship built on mutual respect, I'm open to that. Until then, I wish you well. Rachel. I mailed the letter from the post office myself. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't get one. Instead, I got to work. Not on the company, on myself. With the help of Dr. Brooks, I started reevaluating not just my family, but the patterns I had let control me for years. Giving too much, shrinking too small, apologizing for existing. Not anymore. My first big step, moving out of that Florida condo, the one I'd barely furnished, still treating like a stopover. I moved into the beachfront house I had bought as an investment. A quiet, modern 2-story place in Santa Rosa Beach, floor-to-ceiling windows, a wide deck that opened to the Gulf of Mexico. I had only visited twice since I bought it. It felt too nice, too far removed from who I thought I was allowed to be. But that's the thing. When you stop seeking approval, you start claiming what you've earned. The house became my reset button. I gutted the furniture, replaced it with artisan pieces from the very makers I partnered with through Harvest Link. My kitchen became a canvas of hand-thrown pottery, Vermont wooden bowls, and custom-woven linens from our New Mexico cellars. It wasn't just decorating. It was reclaiming my space. Every item had meaning, a story, a soul. Every room began to feel like me unapologetically. I established new rituals. Morning walks on the sand before meetings. Weekly strategy calls on the deck with my leadership team. Late nights journaling with wine. My rescue dog Charlie curled at my feet. Then came the call. Actually, it wasn't a call. It was a visit. A knock at the door. It was Darren. Unannounced, uninvited. I opened the door, stunned. He stood there, buttoned down, tucked into his designer jeans, a practiced smile on his face. "Wow," he said, stepping inside before I could stop him. "Nice place." He walked through the foyer, pausing at the view. "So this is where your little online hobby got you, huh?" I didn't answer. I just let the silence speak for itself. Finally, he turned around, his tone shifting. "Listen," he said, "I didn't come here to fight. I came here with a business idea, something you might want in on." There it was, the real reason. He had never cared about my success. But now that it was undeniable, he wanted a piece. "I need an investment," he said casually. "Just a loan, really. Ground floor stuff. You'd be helping family." I let that sentence hang in the air for a moment. Helping family. The same family that watched me walk out of that dinner like I didn't exist. "I'm not making any loans to family anymore," I said calmly. That chapter's closed. His smile tightened. Come on, Rachel, don't be like that. Dad didn't mean what he said. He was just surprised. Surprised, I said. Darren, he looked me in the face and called me trash. You sat there and didn't say a word. He shrugged. You know how he is. I do. And now I know how you are, too. I opened the door. He hesitated, then walked out, muttering something about how money changes people. But I wasn't the one who'd changed. I was the one who had finally stopped pretending. That night, I sat on the deck with Charlie curled beside me and made another decision. A legacy move. I called my attorney and set up the Rachel Hayes Foundation for Builders Without Degrees. A full-ride scholarship for 5 students a year, not based on GPA, but on demonstrated grit, creativity, and real-world initiative. The application, no essay, just proof that they'd started something, anything. A business, a product, a service, something they believed in. I'd pair each recipient with a mentor, someone who had built a company from nothing, like I had. People who understood what classrooms couldn't teach. I wasn't going to beg my family to respect me anymore. I'd create a whole ecosystem that respected people like me. People who didn't wait for permission. People who built anyway. I never wanted revenge. Not the dramatic, shout it from the rooftops kind. Not the I told you so kind. But there's a different kind of revenge. The kind that grows quietly, slowly, until it becomes undeniable. And it starts showing up in the places your critics can't ignore. 3 weeks after Darren showed up unannounced, I got a text from my friend Eliza. She owned a local art gallery and had become my closest friend in Santa Rosa Beach. Pick up a copy of The Business Coastline. Page 3. You're gonna want to see this. I didn't think much of it. I hadn't given any interviews recently. But there it was. A full-page profile. A photo of me standing on the deck of my beach house. The Gulf shimmering behind me. The headline read, E-commerce visionary moves, HQ to Santa Rosa, a $20 million story of grit and grace. The article was incredibly well-researched. They'd traced public records, Harvest Link's founding, our partnerships, our impact on American manufacturing, even the scholarship foundation I had just launched. I didn't even know they were writing it. But the article was clean, accurate, and powerful. No mention of my family, just me, my work, my mission. By the end of the day, it had been picked up by Florida Business Monthly and shared all over LinkedIn. Within a week, I was receiving invitations to speak at women's leadership panels. Local news anchors reached out. College professors wanted to bring me in for guest lectures. Former classmates I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered I existed. Knew you'd make it. So proud of you. Remember when we talked about starting something in high school? Teachers emailed. Past mentors congratulated me. It was strange. None of it had happened when I hit my first million. None of it had happened when I opened that first office. But now that there was a photo of ocean waves and a dollar sign, suddenly I was worth noticing. I smiled at the irony. Then, 3 days later, the article made its way back home. Livonia's local paper ran a condensed version with a new headline. Local Dropout builds 20 million business, launches National Foundation. That's when the real wave hit. My cousin sent me a friend request, then another, then more. Old church acquaintances messaged me. Even my old high school principal reached out to congratulate me on breaking the mold. But the message that stopped me cold came from my mother. Saw the article. Very impressive. Dear, Dad and I are so proud. Proud. The word stung more than it comforted. Where was that pride when I was packing boxes at 2 a.m.? Where was it when I paid off $75,000 of medical debt behind the scenes? Then came Dad's voicemail. Amanda? Sorry, Rachel. I saw the news. Big article. That's something. Listen, seems like there was some misunderstanding back at the dinner. Give me a call sometime. A misunderstanding. That's how he framed calling me uneducated trash and kicking me out of his house. The final blow. A text from my mom a few days later. We're thinking of visiting Florida next month. Would love to see your new place. Let us know what works. Like nothing had happened. Like those years of silence and judgment could be erased by a plane ticket and a friendly tone. I didn't respond. Not immediately. Instead, I scheduled a session with Dr. Brooks. I needed clarity. You have power now, she said, but you also have choices. This isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. She was right. So I took a breath, and I replied, You and Dad are welcome to visit, but before that happens, we need an honest conversation about what was said, about what's been done. I won't move forward without it. Mom responded quickly. Of course, dear. We just want to be a family again. That word again, family. But now, I understood what kind of family I wanted. Not one that required me to shrink. Not one that loved only when I was quiet. And definitely not one that mistook silence for peace. I agreed to meet them for lunch at a beachfront restaurant. A neutral space. Somewhere public, safe, open. They arrived dressed for a formal dinner. Dad in slacks and a stiff shirt. Mom in her Sunday best. We sat down. They looked smaller than I remembered. More unsure. Dad cleared his throat first. This place is something else, he said, gesturing at the view. You've done well for yourself. The emphasis was subtle, but I caught it. For yourself, meaning not the way we told you to. Thanks, I said, without offering more. Small talk followed, about the flight, the weather, retirement plans. I let them speak. I nodded. I didn't help the conversation along. Eventually, the subject shifted. About what happened at the birthday dinner, Dad said. Finally. I was surprised. I may have overreacted. Not an apology. Just a deflection. You called me trash, I said plainly. You told me I didn't belong in your house, that my money didn't make me part of the family. His face flushed. I didn't mean. But you did, I interrupted. You meant every word, and you still haven't apologized. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Mom jumped in. We've always been proud of you. We were just worried. You didn't follow the traditional path. I built my own path, I replied, and I'm not ashamed of that. I won't let anyone make me feel like I should be. They looked down at their plates. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't tidy. But it was necessary. I told them I'd give them a tour of the house, after lunch, but only if they understood something. If they wanted to be in my life, there would be rules. No more condescension. No more dismissiveness. And no more pretending the past didn't happen. After lunch, we drove separately to the house. I had arranged for them to stay at a nearby hotel, not with me. That wasn't a punishment, it was protection. I needed to preserve the peace I had built. When they stepped into my home, the air shifted. It was quiet at first. They walked slowly through the entryway. My mother paused at the handcrafted mosaic tile by the door, her fingers grazing its surface. My father stood still at the glass wall facing the ocean, arms crossed. They said nothing, because they didn't have to. Every detail in that house, every shelf, every photograph, every handmade object told a story of the life I had created on my own terms. And for the first time, they couldn't minimize it. They couldn't call it a phase, or luck, or some internet scheme. They were standing inside the proof. This is impressive, my mother said finally, almost in a whisper. I nodded, letting the silence settle in. As we moved through the rooms, I pointed out certain pieces. That rug is from an artisan in New Mexico. We kept her family's weaving tradition alive. This table made by a veteran woodworker in Maine. He was 2 months away from closing shop before we partnered. I didn't say it to impress them. I said it to remind myself that what I'd built wasn't just profitable. It was meaningful. Dad ran his hand along the wooden countertop. "This is oak?" he asked. "Reclaimed, from a demolished barn in Kentucky." He gave a short nod, but didn't say more. We ended the tour on the back deck, the waves rolling in softly, just below the dunes. They sat, I stayed standing. "I'm not angry anymore," I said, "but I'm not going to pretend nothing happened. That dinner changed everything." "I understand," my mother said. Her voice was low, but steady. "We were wrong." That caught me off guard. She rarely admitted mistakes. She always deferred to Dad. But now she looked directly at me. "You didn't deserve to be spoken to that way," she added, "and you didn't deserve to be ignored for so many years." My chest tightened, because for the first time in my adult life, she saw me. Not as a rebel, not as a failure, as a woman who had made something extraordinary. My dad didn't speak right away. He looked out at the water for a long time. "I worked hard my whole life," he said finally. "Got a degree, kept my head down, provided for the family. That was my definition of success." "I know," I said, "and I respect that. But you changed the definition." He continued. "You did something I didn't understand. Maybe I still don't, but I see it now, and I'm sorry." It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no sweeping emotional monologue. But it was real. It was enough. We sat there for a long time, the three of us, watching the ocean, letting the past loosen its grip, just slightly. That night, they returned to their hotel. I didn't offer for them to stay. That boundary stayed firm. In the following weeks, our contact became cautious but consistent. Brief check-ins, neutral topics, small attempts to reconnect on new ground. I didn't expect overnight transformation. That's not how healing works. But I was no longer chasing anything, no longer shrinking, no longer waiting for permission to be proud of myself. Sienna eventually called, too. This time, not to justify, not to smooth things over. She apologized. She said she had always envied how fearless I was, that she hadn't known how to support me without feeling small by comparison. We talked, for real, for the first time in years. She even asked me about the foundation, how it worked, who we funded. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Darren stayed silent. A polite Christmas card, a generic congrats comment on LinkedIn, but no real engagement. And honestly, I was fine with that. Not every relationship deserves to be repaired. Sometimes, the best closure is choosing not to reopen the door. As for me, I kept building. The foundation gained traction. More applications, more media attention, more stories of kids who reminded me of younger me fighting to be seen, respected, supported. My company thrived. We added a fulfillment hub in Colorado, launched a holiday collaboration with a national retailer, introduced health benefits and remote work options for all full-time staff. But the biggest change, me. I didn't hesitate anymore. When asked what I did, I didn't downplay my numbers. I didn't flinch when someone raised an eyebrow at my lack of degree. I stood in my story, fully. The house evolved too. More art from our makers. A little reading nook with floor pillows and low lighting. A garden in the back that attracted hummingbirds and butterflies. Charlie the mutt I'd adopted gained a friend, Luna, a senior retriever no one wanted at the shelter. She followed me everywhere, gentle and wise. I hosted gatherings, not big ones, just people who saw me, friends, creators, advisors, a new kind of family. We'd cook, laugh, trade stories under string lights on the deck. Sometimes someone would ask about my family. I'd smile and say, "It's complicated, but I'm okay." And I meant it. Because the real revenge, It wasn't the article. It wasn't the recognition. It wasn't even the quiet apologies. The real revenge was choosing myself fully, finally, without guilt. And watching everything bloom from there, looking back, the story I've just told isn't just about money, family, or even success. It's about something deeper. It's about finally stepping into my own life without apology, even when the people who mattered most didn't understand me. For years, I thought winning meant earning my family's respect. I thought if I worked harder, gave more, or shrank myself small enough, they'd finally see me. But the truth is, some people only know how to love you in the ways they understand. And sometimes, what they understand is too small for the person you're meant to become. Letting go was hard. Setting boundaries was harder. But real growth meant learning that I didn't have to keep proving my worth to anyone, not even to my parents. Especially not to those who could only value a version of me that never really existed. If any part of this feels familiar, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own home, or if you fought to be seen for who you are, not who someone else needed you to be, I hope you know you're not alone. You don't have to wait for permission to chase your dreams. You don't have to downplay your success to fit someone else's comfort zone. The people meant for you will find you when you're standing in your own truth, not when you're hiding in their shadow. Building Harvest Link, launching the foundation, and building my real life here on the coast, all of that was important. But the most important thing I built was my own sense of self-respect. And with that, everything else fell into place. The journey isn't over. Family wounds don't disappear overnight. Sometimes, they never fully close. But you get stronger. You get better at loving yourself through the disappointment and the old scars. And you get better at building new family, chosen family, around shared respect and authentic connection. So if you're still listening, thank you. Maybe this story made you think. Maybe it made you feel less alone. Maybe it gave you the courage to finally draw a line, or to reach for something you've been told is impossible. If you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your story in the comments. How have you had to fight for respect, or draw new boundaries with family? I read every comment, and I hope we can lift each other up here. No matter who doubts you, remember, you don't need anyone's permission to bloom. Thank you for listening. Take care. Your story isn't finished yet.